But you know what? I just use Sam Walton's book as an example because there's tons of books out there. There's books on relationships. There's books on how to improve, how to become a better leader. There's books on how to, as a matter of fact, the top 10 book list I have, 5 books are on people skills, 5 books are just on success in general. You know, books like on the success side, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I'll guarantee you, you open up that book on one side, you're thinking about leadership one way. You close the book on the other side, you're thinking about leadership differently. Books like Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. You go over to the bookstore over here at the mall, about half the books in finance were written by Robert Kiyosaki in Finance and Money. You open that book front cover, you're thinking about money one way. You close it, you're thinking about money a different way. You know, books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that I mentioned. Books like Few Keys to All Success. That's the #1 book on there. Is it because I think it's the best book? No, it's because it's my list and it's my book. You know, you want your book to be #1? You write a book and you make a list. It can be #1. So, but there's books about how to be just a success. And then a key part of being a success in anything is developing people skills. There's books on like Personality Plus, like Florence Littauer, that'll help you understand the differences between people. There's books like 5 Love Languages, which show you how to affirm people. There's books like How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's my favorite book outside the Bible. I needed it when I read it. Because I was doing much better at losing friends and infuriating people than winning friends and influencing people when I read that book. And I started reading it. I said, wow, I could see why you'd want to do that. I don't do that. I'd read it. I'd say, wow, I could see why you wouldn't want to do that. I do that all the time. And lo and behold, I read that book over and over, and every time I read it, you know, there was all these jerks in my life. I mean, everywhere I went, you know, there were jerks. I mean, I was just so tired. I was sitting there, God, why did you put all these jerks in my life? I started reading How to Win Friends and Influence People and all these books on people skills, and guess what? Everybody got better. A few years later, I realized the painful truth. Guess who the jerk was? It was the guy who hadn't been reading the books. And so it's so important that we read books, that you don't stop your education when you graduate, but rather that's just your, and don't let your, here's the thing I guess that frustrates me most about education. We spend the first 2 years of your education teaching you to read, and the next 14 years teaching you to hate to read. By making you read books that aren't interested, written by really crummy authors that don't know how to write, that sound like they swallowed a dictionary. Does this sound familiar to anybody? But there's a lot of books out there. I force my students to read books in my classes. But not books like they typically read in college, but books like I'm talking about here. And the most amazing thing is I have students that'll do this, and this really excites me. First of all, one thing they'll do is they'll go home and they'll say, Mom, you got to read this book. Mom, Dad, you got to read this book. And they'll start, you know, making people read, you know, and Mom, Dad's going like, what? I've been trying to get you to read books for years. And now you're telling me to read books? They'll say, what do you want for Christmas? And this kid that they couldn't bribe to read a book for the last 18 years of their lives gives them a book list. I want these books. There's incredible power out there in the books to help you become a better person, but they're not if you don't read them. You know that the person who won't read is no better off than the person who can't read?